All right, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna go through and we're gonna replace these ugly plastic clips here with titanium hardware. And the way that we do that is we remove the plastic clips, and we're gonna have to drill the holes out to fit the well nut, the rubber well nut that's gonna go down in there. And then the rubber well nut will allow us to put in a titanium bolt inside the well nut, which will compress and tighten and do the same job the plastic clip will. So pro tip, whenever you're using removing plastic clips, you want to use the right tool. And what you want to do is have a microfiber towel, so that way you don't scratch up the edges when you put this in there. Now another pro tip for you, because sometimes there'll be multiple holes underneath of this plastic shroud. So what I like to do is take a permanent marker and go into the hole and just make a little mark on each of the holes. So that way when you lift up this shroud, you actually know which holes are the right ones. So you can see we got a mark on each of our holes here. All right, now that we've got access to the holes, the next thing we want to do, and this applies, doesn't matter what the material is, if it's plastic, if it's metal, it doesn't matter. You want to take some tape, painter's tape works best, I found. Put that over the hole and just press down with your fingernail inside there. It'll give you a nice impression of where the hole is exactly underneath that tape. And what this helps to do, it helps give you a nice clean hole when you use the drill on it. All right, so before we get ready to drill, one thing you do want to make sure you look for is look underneath the hole and see if there's a possibility you might be able to make some contact with either a part of the car or plastic or painted part. And if there is any possibility of contact when you go through the hole, you want to also put some tape over that too. Now you could also put a microfiber or rag or some other kind of material under there, but if you do put a towel or something, just be aware that if the drill does punch through that hole and it hits the towel, it is going to catch on the towel and wind it up. So just be careful. All right, so we're getting ready to drill now, and it's really good practice when you're drilling is don't automatically go to the largest size, especially if you're going from a smaller hole. You want to kind of step up. So we're going to use a smaller drill bit first, and then when we drill a second time, we're going to use the actual drill bit size that we want. That just helps make it a little bit easier when you're drilling out the hole. Keeps you from getting as much material and getting the drill stuck. Okay, so now we drilled our first hole, and you saw that when we drilled that hole, this is a plastic front bumper, so we got a lot of plastic pieces and all that kind of stuff. So one thing you want to do, you've got a couple options here. If you want, you can set up a vacuum, or you can get a second person to help you so that they're actually sucking up all of the particles and everything else that come off when you drill as you're drilling it, or you can do it afterwards. So you can drill it and then do it. Now, when you're working with plastic, it's not as big of a deal. But if you are working with metal, like we're gonna do later on the side of the fenders, you definitely wanna set the vacuum up ahead of time and catch as much as those metal shards as you can. Now we're done. We vacuum, we take our tape off. Just put our finger on that a little bit. We got a nice hole for the well nut to go in now. All right, now we just put our well nut in there. I want to make sure we got a nice tight fit. That's exactly what we want. And so with the well nuts, it doesn't take a lot of pressure to get them to expand. I think the actual spec for the well nuts is about 8 inch-pounds, which is basically just a little bit more than what you can do with your fingers. So you do not need to get a tool in here and start ratcheting down to get them like super tight, because if you do that with the rubber well nut, what's going to happen is you can over tighten the bolts inside of the well nut, and you'll get exactly something like this, which will happen is it'll start to actually twist the well nut. And eventually you tighten that too much, it'll rip, and then it'll get really loose. So it'll get tight, and then it'll be loose. And that's because the well nut will have ripped. So you make sure everything's lined up, and you'll be able to feel it getting tight with just your fingers. And you want to put a little down pressure as you're pushing down. Put a little bit of pressure on that well nut, and then you'll know it's tight now.